pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any adjustments to the agenda? We're not doing the names tonight. Are we?
If you could, that would be great. If you want to wait, I don't know if everybody got the email today with the names that the Historical Society.
We're gonna vote on that? We won't vote on that.
Well, they narrowed it down to 10. It would be great if it was 3 to 5.
Vote on it. School for their. Okay. For their.
Or if you could just let me know which ones you would recommend and I'll
Everyone get a chance?
email it to me.
Let's,
Email it to me and then the ones that are common that you all pick 5. Those will be the ones we send to the school.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, I got them. I already looked at them, so. You just want us to email them our
Mhm.
picks, so.
That would be great. if You could do that.
Yeah, open up the public hearing. We'll open up public hearing for the general assistance ordinance update.
I'd make that motion.
So moved. Seconded, sorry.
All in favor? Public hearing is open. Yeah. Chief?
Anything from me? Do you guys have a chance to review it all?
We'll go with yes.
Go with yes. It's 108 pages long. So,
Yeah.
I think ultimately, I'm still learning this role. Julie's been very helpful, and as has, Karen Ann and Daryl. So I think it's been usual practice to just sort of adopt the ordinance as is that the state recommends. And so essentially I just need that approval so we can have you guys sign it and mail it off to the state. And, then the ordinance will come into effect and I can post it in the office and on my side of the world as well. So.
Typically in the past, what older members on the board or those who have the most longevity,
Most senior.
the most senior members of the board will recall, we typically just do the income limits. This year, what happened was the Maine Municipal Welfare Directors Association and the MMA worked with the legislature to really change some key points in this. And I will be honest with you, both the MMA and the General Assistance Administrators Organization were very upset when it went into committee. And it came out with changes that did not resemble anything that they had worked on.
It's a whole different, it looks different
It's
entirely.
a whole different document. What is frustrating is, so one of the requirements in this is to have a trauma-informed general assistance administrator. We are blessed because we have someone with that training through his full-time job. There are many towns throughout Maine that don't have that luxury, where this is a hat that is worn by the tax collector or the tax assessor or someone who's not trained. None of us that and even Derek is not a social worker. But that is something that this is really going towards. And unfortunately, it went through the legislative committee and then it was voted on. And we are now stuck with what this document says. Here's the kicker. It says we have to adopt it. If we don't, then we are on the hook for the full cost of general assistance. So we really don't have a choice. We can't amend it. We can't not adopt it, or else we get stuck footing the bill and we don't get any reimbursement.
So I guess now is a good time to echo what Julie says, because we sort of go with the flow. We are able to ask for reimbursement from the state for this. So it's really kind of one of those things where we're sort of painted into a corner and we can't amend it. So we're not allowed to. So.
And I got a thrill about the first 30 or so pages.
Yeah.
And it's
very turgid, very legalistic.
It-
Certainly any person in need is not gonna be able to understand a word of this.
That's a,
It's,
yeah.
it's a really awful document, in my opinion. Is there gonna be any future changes to amend this? Is the next legislature gonna address this? I mean,
I think they heard the cries of the MWDA, the main welfare directors, but I thought, hopefully, I'll tell you, speaking of trauma informed, the very point you just made about having to educate people when they come in for this sort of thing is what we spend a lot of our time doing, because they can't get through the application process, they can't get through the forms. And it takes time, it takes my time, it takes Julie's time, and it's okay, but it is rigid. It's a hard, we hear a lot of complaints about the application. Now, I get that we have to have an application process because we are talking about taxpayer money and state money, but it is difficult. And a lot of times people are coming to us, frankly, in a time of need, and they're not able to transcribe all of this, but we do our best to help them
it's
translate
like a
it.
first draft.
So, yeah.
I just want to say that what we did, and we were at the forefront of the community navigation piece of this. What our community navigation program did was make this almost obsolete. If you look back before community navigation, we were averaging probably between $15,000 and $20,000 a year worth of GA, of which we were at that time responsible for 30% of. I don't think last year we had an application because all of that went through community navigation. And I just am very proud of the fact that, in our community that we have that wraparound service and now it's available throughout the county. Here in Lincoln County, I attended a managers meeting that went from Saginaw all the way up to Andrews.
Yeah,
No,
like,
beyond Knox.
yeah, so like Waldo County.
Waldo County. Karen Aiken, our
Excuse me.
community navigator for Lincoln County, was a speaker, and of course, I had a lot to say too, because we started the program. And people were amazed at the services that our community navigation provided. And I made that point to say, hey, this is something that every town needs. They may not know they need it, but they need it. But that document that you read, you're right, it's a first draft, it's just not, and it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And it doesn't make sense for a lot of towns.
Yeah, just to reiterate, the MMA was not in favor of this version of what was put out. And they had a seminar at the recent convention,
They did.
which was overwhelmingly critical of this whole thing. So there will be stuff coming out to change it.
And unfortunately, they could not articulate, the legislators
No.
that are on that committee could not articulate how these changes got made. And that's concerning to me. If you have a legislator that's on a committee and they can't tell you how the changes got made, or chose not to tell you how the changes got made without including the people who are on the ground, that speaks volumes to what's wrong with, when a state agency is telling local municipalities what to do. So,
I really think that in terms of Waldeboro and giving some peace of mind to the select board and the public, we navigate it quite well. I ask questions. There's a GA hotline. That is one thing they've done really well, and we're able to call them and say, hey, you're in the weeds of this document far more than we are. What's our next move here? And then we work through that together. And so between community navigation, myself, and the front office, we got it down to a science,
We're a
even though
team.
we're a team, and it's not a perfect science, but it's a science nonetheless, and we're on it. So
and I'm just gonna say one more thing. I think that our team is exceptional in the fact that they genuinely care about helping people. And I think unfortunately, there are places that don't care near as much as our team does about providing those wraparound services and making sure people get the help they need. And that's not something we always hear about a town office, and I'm just very.
it's a good thing. people are held accountable, you know, when we do offer that aid, you know, there are some stipulations of doing what they can on their end as well. So it's kind of it's like to think of it as mutually beneficial between us and the person who's asking for our help.
Any of the board members have questions, comments? Well, public comments, any public comments on this subject? Hearing none, motion to close the hearing? So moved. All in favor?
To close the hearing or to approve the.
No, we'll close the hearing first.
Did someone
Second
second
it?
it?
Anyone second? All in favor of closing? Now we'll act on this updated general assistance ordinance. All in favor?
And we're approving appendices A through H as well. Right?
Everything.
Everything, yeah,
I
okay.
need a motion in a second.
I so move.
Second.
Keep me on track.
Sorry.
All in favor?
So I think Pam has the sort of official form for you guys to sign. It basically looks something like this.
Didn't that go?
So I'll need that in my hands at some point so we can get it sent off to the state. So appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Job, Derek. Any presentations? Citizens comment?
Okay, it's talent show again. John let me know that he's not going to be here to say the Pledge of Allegiance to open up the talent show. And when I hear the Pledge of Allegiance and about being in one God, one country, and unity, I would love to have I'd love to be able to say, I can't say John Blodgett and the select board, but I really would like on the poster to be able to say Waldeboro Select Board as part of the people that is represented at the talent show. So I'm asking formally if you will join each other in saying the Pledge of, in leading the audience who has forgotten how to say the Pledge of Allegiance, because so many people I run into go, oh, I've forgotten. We used to do that in school and we don't anymore. And I think it would be great to be able to, I can't think of another part of town government that could lead the audience at the Waldo on November 2nd in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll be there.
I cannot. I will be in North Carolina.
Bummer. Rebecca, we've talked, so it's a maybe. And Abden, you might get a buy and you might not. Depends if you can find that clam harvester.
Honestly, I was excited about it. As soon as
I know you were.
I mentioned the date.
Yeah.
The date we have a commitment act. Was that?
I want to ask about one other thing. I know that we've had a formal motion of support here for the talent show. And I don't have a poster yet, but I will have one. And I'm wondering whether it could somehow be attached to the town website as soon as I get a digital file. Great.
Put it out on our Facebook page
Okay, great.
for the front sign.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have a comment.
Uh-huh.
You know, November 2nd is also the Day of the Dead.
I know that.
Okay, just thought I'd. point
It's
that
also
out.
the day John Kennedy got assassinated,
Foreshadowing.
isn't it?
Good Lord.
I think
That'll be.
John Kennedy was assassinated on November 2nd.
22nd of
November.
22nd, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from citizens?
Can I just comment on what she had to say?
Yes.
Children in school definitely say the Pledge of Allegiance. Just so you know.
Okay. Well, some people have said they've forgotten how to say it. So
I believe you.
it's a good reminder.
Select board comments, Abden?
I just got one. We started our sampling for the
impact study, or is it
Capacity study.
capacity study for the Madomic for aquaculture and clams and stuff like that. We did, I went down, spent 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours doing water samples, doing all kinds of crazy um dissolved oxygen tests and all kinds of stuff like that. And visibility tests and crazy stuff like that, but I spent about 2.5, 3 hours downriver this afternoon doing that. So that started.
Is that what students of the, or no?
No,
No, this
this
is
is
through
FBM. and
FB Environmental through the grant that Max got, so that we can see if what kind of shellfish can live together and or not, and what we have in the river.
One thing we did learn is up high, there's a lot of dissolved oxygen. The deeper you got, the less there was. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it dropped off. He said it was good up high, but the further you got down, the worse it was.
The next testing run you do, I'm sure we have a intrepid reporter that would love to go.
Might be in the end of November, so it could be a little chilly, but it was pretty chilly down there today. He didn't dress properly. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, poor Luke.
Got nothing.
What's that?
I just a comment, it's election time. And people are stealing signs. I just want to point that out. I'm sad to say that, it's both sides or whoever, I don't know who the hell's doing it. But I think it's wrong, and I think we need to be very strongly condemning that kind of thing.
Here,
That's all I gotta say.
I agree.
Just a quick update. We are scheduled for the 21st, Monday, the 21st of October. Is at 6 p.m. here in the conference room to meet with the select board as a workshop. Getting some small agenda items. It's gonna be kind of a collaborative approach to get to know each other, learn about what each other does. Not gonna be them versus us or us versus them. It's gonna be, let's find out what they're all about, so they can find out what we're all about and how we do things, and we can move forward on this to work together as a team. And the agenda will be in your boxes or on your emails too.
I got a comment for what Bob just said. There was somebody caught and summoned.
Good,
Mm.
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, I have town manager reports.
I just want to remind everybody, absentee ballots are available and you can come into the town office and see our lovely clerk, Kim Jameson. You can also call and you can go online at the Secretary of State website and one can be sent to you. Many of you have noticed at the Old Augusta Road and 220 intersection, there has been a lot of work. There is a culvert that is needing to be replaced. That is a joint effort between the MDOT and the town of Waldeboro. They are providing the culvert and the box and we are putting it in, so it's a joint effort. Also, tax bills are out. If you need information about our tax club, there was an insert in your tax bill. If for some reason you didn't see it and you would like to be part of the tax club, please come in, see one of our front staff. And they will be more than happy to help you sign up and get that started. And I can tell you that we've had a lot of people request to participate in that. I just think it's making that bill a little bit easier for people to handle if they can spread it out over not 8 or 9 payments. So it's been the most increase I've seen since I've been here and people asking for the tax club. So heads up on that. And as most everybody has heard that Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee suffered greatly during the hurricane that just went through Helene. Chief Lash is going down for a week and volunteering his services. And I believe they're going to a small town in North Carolina. One of the things that they need is Tyvek suits. And one of the things we happen to have an inordinate amount of because of COVID is Tyvek suits. We have several hundred of them. And the chief wanted me to ask tonight if we would give, if if he could have permission to take 50 to 75 of them with him to donate down south. They just need it for people who are doing recovery efforts. I didn't think there would be a problem, but I wanted to make sure we had your blessing before we authorized the use of those.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, that'd be
I'd
great.
make the motion to send down 50 or 75 to the chief to North Carolina when he goes down there.
I'll second it for discussion.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, how many do we really need on hand?
Well, we have about 300 to 400.
Have him take as many as he can fit.
And how many do we need on hand?
We have.
It
Do we
depends.
need 100? Is 100 plenty for?
It depends, anything can happen. I would like to think that if something horrible happened here, wherever these go, I will tell you that in my experience, in the towns that I worked in prior, during any hurricane or event, we always sent items and personnel. And it was always repaid to us. When our dams burst in Medford Lakes, we had people from Virginia come and help us. When Sandy hit, we had people who we had helped during Katrina come. So I think I will check with both chiefs. They were fine, EMS chief and police chief. And one of his biggest concerns, and it's hard. So each person going down has to take 10 cases of water with them for their own personal use. But what they're needing is actual, not gas cans. Cans to put gas in because they're all gone. Not, they need the oil to mix with the gas for the chainsaws. And that's what he's going to be assigned to, is actually a chainsaw gang. He's going with a heavy equipment operator who may be using heavy equipment. So I did ask him, he's not leaving till next week, if there was a list of things they need. And one of the other items is how much room do they have to take things with them? So I will keep that up to date. And if there are things we need, I'm sure it would be fine if I put that on the Facebook page and let people know. So
Would he talk to us after he comes back to tell us how?
I would definitely
That would be cool.
request that he
Yeah.
does that, because I think it's really important. And I can't stress enough, when you are, and I'm gonna say this as somebody who went through Sandy, as a person who lived through Sandy, and then a person who was in municipal government during Sandy. You need to be, as a town, prepared yourselves. Because that help, although it comes and the money flies in from the federal government, it's not like the federal government is showing up with cash. That's not how this works. They come and they give you certain types of aid if they have it. A lot of it is coordination, and they have access to the things that you might need. But when it comes to the actual work, that is something that is done on the local level. And I can't stress that enough. When you're sitting there and you have no electric, and it's going to be weeks, and you have no water, and you have people whose homes are filled with mud, and your resources are, who can I call and who do I know that has heavy equipment? And I will tell you this story very briefly. My home, I had very minimal damage, but you walked a block away from my house and nothing was left. I went to work 25 miles away and life was perfectly normal. Except for the fact that we had, several days after, a straight windstorm that went through the town in which I worked. And we had trees like I'd never seen down before in my life. It doesn't matter, the federal government still has to move equipment to you. But if you know some contractors, you can call up a contractor, and I called up a contractor who I went to high school with and said, I've got this problem. I've got like roads filled with trees. He goes, I'll get you a dozer, I'll get you a tub grinder, and I'll get you an excavator. And that's the kind of things that you need to do, that local government does so well. And the state government quite frankly, in federal government, don't do as well. They're just not equipped and they don't have the relationships in the area that you need to have. So I was very proud that our chiefs is going.
It's all part of the incident command system.
It's, but a lot of it is incident command, but a lot of it is those relationships, those personal relationships that you have with the people around you. So I know that if in this town we had a shortage of dump trucks, I know I'm calling you. And saying, hey, John. But I'm just very proud of the fact that he's going. Done. Oh,
No. So I guess the motion is take what you can get. We have to check.
Well,
with the
that's
chief.
what I was gonna amend the motion to anything above and beyond what we need, feel as though we need
On hand right away.
on hand
Right away.
should be shipped.
All in favor?
Fair enough.
Cause if we've got that many, then
Yeah.
we've got an overabundance.
Anything else from the town manager?
no, she's done.
Be done. Most of the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion? All in favor? New business, talk about the new traffic ordinance.
So if you'll recall, when we changed Shady Lane to a one-way, there were some comments about it being an antiquated ordinance. So I revamped the ordinance. I took it from I totally revamped our ordinance. Taking it from places that had already been vetted by an attorney. Trying to merge ours with others. We got rid of the references for where no parking zones were based on lot and block number and not people's names, because those people are probably long gone. And we just tried to streamline it, make it a little bit easier to understand. I did have a couple people go over it and make changes where I could make changes. So we tried to incorporate all those changes, also the ones that John, Chief Lash and John Daigle wanted. I was not expecting you to act on it tonight. I just wanted you to have it, review it, mark it up. I gave it to you all in paper form so that you can make your chicken scratch on it, and I can make adjustments, and hopefully we can put this in. This is not something that has to go before the voters. This is something that you can act on. So if we could act on it by like November, that would be great.
Good with that? Old business, that's tunnel agreement.
I have reached out to Nobleboro and I still do not have any reply back. Max said they are not going to be applying for, and I think he heard this through Lincoln County Planning, but I'm not sure that they are not applying for the grant in the November round. So I would assume that it might be handy if perhaps there are 3 select board members came to our last meeting. Perhaps one of the select board members could reach out to one of their select board members and see if maybe one of you have better luck than I have.
I will.
Will you? Thank you. I would appreciate that. 3-phase electric update. I have not gotten a update from Katie over at Midcoast, but I know they are working on it, and their theory is that they might be able to do this without going to 3-phase. They were waiting on some information from their vendor. And I didn't know if you had heard anything else.
Solar farm update.
So the day after our last meeting, we heard from Danny. And the agreement has been signed. The money is in a escrow. And as soon as and 3 optimizers were replaced at the solar farm. So it is in very lovely working order. Everything lights up and is producing electric. However, there's still, we still are just waiting for the actual maintenance records and all the warranties that go with it, and also the sign in for our account to watch it and monitor it for a monitoring account, which I think was switched over today. So as soon as our attorney receives those things, he'll release the funding, and we should be good to go. And we have not made the last payment for electricity until all of those things are actually in our hands, and then we will make our last payment.
Did they talk about the maintenance at all, or have we decided?
So I made the executive decision based on our last meeting that we would just forego the maintenance agreement. The system did check out through our third party, and I think we're in good shape that way. And I'm pursuing both those avenues for a maintenance agreement. And they're more than welcome to also bid on that. But past performance may be considered when you're considering those options.
Will that go out on an RFP?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's where we are with the solar farm update.
Any other questions from the solar update from the section? Hale's Corner update.
I just wanted to make this, I don't think I've ever made this formal presentation about Taylor's Corner, but we did receive word back from the Maine DOT. At, I think it was 3 meetings ago, you guys authorized some funding to help raise the approach from town up to the light, to raise and make a ramp that a truck could stop on if there was a 4-way stop there. The grade is just too significant. They had their survey team out and it was greater than a 15% grade, and they can't have that. You can't stop, and we can't raise it. And then if you raised it, there would be a drop off to the sidewalk. So it's not able to be done. I did float the idea of a 3-way stop because that came up here, and they just cannot, for safety reasons, just have a 3-way stop. They think that might be even more dangerous than how it exists right now. So they are putting that on their work plan for 2026. Again, they're going to have to design it. We encourage them when they do that design to extend the sidewalk all the way to the ball fields. We thought that would be a good thing to do also, and there is funding for that through the state. And that would be a portion of, we would apply for a grant for the sidewalk extension when they're doing all of that reconstruction. In the meantime, I did ask them for other ideas to improve safety, maybe flashing stop signs. At least along with the flashing light above. Maybe people are just immune to seeing the flashing light above. But I thought that would be something interesting. And that was just a suggestion that we gave them, but that intersection is not going to be dealt with as quickly as we had anticipated. Just because the grade is too significant. I also should report, while we're talking about flashing lights, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but the flashing lights on our dynamic speed signs on Jefferson Street and on Friendship are working. I don't know if anybody's noticed, they're a little bit different than the state signs. They do a few more things. Our resident geek in Public Works programmed them. And so if you are going, it says slow down, it flashes your speed. If you go over 35 miles an hour, it flashes brighter and faster.
Don't test it.
I haven't.
So it's, but.
John tested it last
we were-
night,
we were-
yesterday.
We were getting some feedback about the signs being very flashy. And I didn't realize that till it was explained to me today that there was a lot of programming that could be done to catch people's attention. So, and they are different than how the state has them programmed. But apparently the quicker and brighter flashing is very noticeable. So, I thought that was great, and I think it's great that we have the capability to program it ourselves. So,
I have noticed that people are slowing.
Oh, absolutely.
They are slower. They're going slow, even though the one from Route 1 going into the village, you gotta be right up on it before it tells you how you're doing. But it's still, you see them, even coming the other direction, you see them coming slower, which is good.
I'm glad, because I know that's been a concern, but I think that it does two different things. It tells you to slow down, then it gives you your speed. It's not just a speed that says slow down. They are going to add oversized speed signs to those poles also. And I did get information from Daryl from the MDOT about ideas for Jefferson Street that potentially they will do. And it talks about some speed signs, regular speed signs. I just asked him, is that something, it's a state road, that part is a state road, is that something they're doing, or is that something that we need to do? So I can probably report about that better the next meeting. That's where we are with Kaler's. Also, there was a request, I forgot, Max, there was a request that
Street.
from the planning board that Route 1 and Depot Street and Route 1 and Jefferson Street be looked at by the DOT to see if a light is needed. And all I would need from you tonight is a motion
I make that motion.
Second.
to ask them
But
to
it takes me
study
5
that.
minutes to get out of my road. It's pretty
Exactly.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and turning left off of Depot onto Route 1 would be a nightmare when people try to do
Like
that.
someone in the crowd said, well, just turn right and go up through Irving and cut through and go north. And no, we don't want that.
So, I will make that happen.
All in favor of this?
I didn't think it was gonna be a hard sell, but, and I know our emergency services would love to see a light. To be able to, cause you would be amazed how many times there could be a fire truck with lights and sirens, or an ambulance with lights and sirens, and people just keep going. So it'd be nice if they could control the light.
Well,
Ian, you reminded me, could I just add that people I've talked to on Jefferson Street really appreciate what the town has done. They just feel much better. And justifiably so.
We aim to please.
Yeah.
It might not be as on everybody's timetable that they like, but we do try.
Okay. Good old business. Agenda's for the next meeting.
We will need a Philbrook for 2 applications.
The next meeting.
Could we also talk about vacant buildings at the next meeting? And one other request, if Max and Ruben are up for it. They've been talking about putting 5G on some of our small poles in town. And I just thought it would be helpful to hear from them about what that would be and how it would work and whether it's something we ought to be looking at. Or primarily for emergency services, but also for individual localized ISPs, so people who don't have.
Oh, you don't have computer stuff. Okay, we keep talking about IBs.
Sorry. Internet service providers.
Is there any information that should be provided to anybody about either of those things prior to the meeting?
Yeah, I got one. Coverage that we don't have for cell service, will that help?
Well, that's why I want. Ruben
Because I know
to-
police officers have a problem on Thomas's Hill and other places that they don't feel comfortable, they can't get service regardless of radio or cell service if they need help. And I was just wondering if that would be a potential for better coverage.
Don't take me as gospel, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
And some towns are doing it.
I think Ruben probably would know better on that, maybe.
Ruben would know.
The vacant buildings, you and I have talked about this.
We did.
Do you want information out prior to the meeting to the select board?
My recommendation was simply gonna be to refer it to the EDC and let them work on it and then come back to us with. And maybe the planning board ought to be looking at this, I don't know, but I just wanted it as a topic of discussion for us to say. Let EDC look at it, see what they come back with as a recommendation. The issue for me is we have ownership of buildings in town. That are owned by people who are not living in Waldeboro and they don't give a darn about the condition of their buildings. And there's a health problem there and there's a safety issue there. And I just think that it would be helpful if a group in town looked at this and recommended, if we do anything, we'll recommend, don't bother, just leave it.
So I just want to say, before we get into an ordinance,
I don't know that we're even there.
well, but you and I've had this conversation, so I know a little bit more than the average bear. If people have a issue with a building that they have a safety or a health concern,
Cool.
there is an avenue called code enforcement officer and our health safety officer. So I'm more concerned, is this a problem? Is it a solution looking for a problem? Or is somebody not? If there's that much concern, I would think that our code enforcement officer would be getting phone calls, as would our health officer, about safety and health.
That's great. But if they have no teeth and can't do anything about it, then
But
we're back to square one. I just think it ought to be discussed and clarified. And if we decide not to do anything, that's fine. But there are towns that are doing things and they've been very, very effective.
So it sounds like we're discussing it now. Maybe we should. do
Well,
that.
no, we're not looking at the resources. I mean, we haven't even done an inventory of what buildings in town are in this category. So,
I would wait, personally, I would wait till we have our housing study done before I did anything like this, because this is going to open up a can of worms. I just, so basically, just to give you a heads up, which I thought there are other towns that if a building is vacant, you have to register it and then you start to monitor it. And then there is a fee attached with that.
it's a license.
It's a license. Again, if safety and health are the goals, we have a code enforcement officer and a health officer. I think before we go down a road and asking any committee to start looking at this, we need to know what the problem is. And this becomes it's a judgment call a lot of times on these. And what my issue becomes is until we actually know what we have, and I've said this numerous times, when we talk about housing in Waldeboro, what do we actually have? We have, oh, housing's an issue here. What is the issue? How many rentals do we have? How many single family homes do we have? How many are occupied? How many aren't? That would give us the number before we figure out, is there an issue or isn't there an issue? What is commercial and what is residential?
You've made this a housing issue. That's not where I'm coming from at all. It's not a housing issue, it's a building issue. And I think the committee would look at that and recognize that as two separate things. I'm really more concerned about commercial buildings that are vacant. And if they're owned by people from out of town, we have absolutely no leverage. None. Ordinance wise, our code enforcement officer is going to call them down in North Carolina somewhere and say, you got a lousy building here, come on up and do something about it. He'll laugh and laugh him off the phone.
But
I pay my taxes. Why should I have to do anything?
But when we've had those issues, our code enforcement officer has addressed them.
To out of towners?
Well, yeah, because we don't
We're
have like
people
special
straight.
laws for out of towners and residents.
Can we?
Talk about this next.
That's
meeting?
why I felt it ought to be talked about.
We're gonna talk about.
Well, I think
I don't know about passing on to the EDC to do it, but.
I think it needs to stay. And Bob and I had this conversation. We did, and I'm sure he disagreed with me, which is why I'm like, okay. But I think that we're skipping a step. And maybe a conversation with Mark and maybe even bring back Stan, because they have had some success in that.
I can think of one example where they've had some success. I agree. But it wasn't a commercial building. It was a residential building.
Again, if those complaints come in, I think we have to give the opportunity to our existing rules to fix that.
But you're waiting for a complaint to come in. By then it could be too late.
Well, if
You know?
you have a list of those buildings, Bob, I suggest that maybe you go see Mark and go see Derek and file a complaint and see what they do before we go and create a whole nother level of bureaucracy. I just think that's select board might feel differently. I'm arguing a point that I'm gonna stop.
Me personally, I'm trying to think of buildings in the town that are.
Well, I can think of a couple, but,
I'm sure you can.
but again, no one's really complained about it.
We've had our code enforcement officer in them, at least one of them that I'm aware of.
Well, then,
And he was able to do absolutely nothing about that building, nothing. And he knows who owns it. And we have another one that's owned by some trust in Japan somewhere. Money speaks, and when you have a license, and this is just one possible solution. I don't want what the committee will recommend after they do their due diligence, but they're gonna probably do most of the heavy lifting on this. I wouldn't want to throw this in the lap of our code enforcement.
well, that's gonna
officer.
also, could also
He will
cause a
surely
problem.
have input, but
That could cause even more of a problem. If I'm an owner of some building and someone's calling me, it's part of some committee in town, what type of team do they
I don't
have?
think I don't think we'd instruct the committee to start contacting people and owners, but simply to identify buildings of concern.
So we're gonna have a committee go out and identify the buildings of
No, I
concern.
wouldn't think you'd have the committee going. I think most of us sitting at this table know the buildings. And most of the people sitting on the committee probably know the buildings. And it would be a matter then of figuring out, well, how do we deal with this? Who does own them? Where are they located? What leverage does the town have? Well, right now, we don't have any.
I know of two commercial buildings, but they're both owned by, and they're unoccupied, but they're both owned by people that live in the town. I don't know what buildings you're talking about.
That's what I figured. Well, let's not get, I don't want to get into that level of conversation. At this committee, this board is going to deal with it. I feel strongly that it ought to be another committee in town and let people do their due diligence and figure it out.
I agree that the code enforcement should be taking those steps. And if there's a problem, the code enforcement have an issue, then we take it to that other level. What's the next level? That's right.
Absolutely.
And then legal.
And what's
One
legal?
thing. Sorry. I don't want to change the subject, so go ahead. But I do want to mention something, but go ahead.
Okay. If your only recourse is legal, you need to have something that you stand on. And we don't have a local ordinance.
We have ordinances about safety and health.
Yeah, but there's no teeth in those ordinances, Julie.
We have the ability to tear down a building. I think that's a lot of teeth.
When was the last time this town tore down a
2018.
derelict building?
The
And that
end of
wasn't,
Diva Road.
that was a mobile home. That was down there on Diva Road.
Again, the ordinance would also have to go through the public.
It
and it
would.
would have to be voted on.
Yep.
It's up to you guys. I'm glad you guys get to vote on that stuff, not me.
I mean, I've talked to the town manager of one of these towns,
I know,
and I know you, you know who he is, and he's
not impressed.
been very effective.
Two totally different towns.
Same population, pretty much.
We're gonna move this question?
Please.
Motion
Sorry.
moved
No, it's just.
Oh.
Put it on the agenda for the next meeting, that's.
Well, we know where it's gonna turn out. We already know. how We'll be doing this all over again.
Okay, yeah.
It's Mike.
Julie, you triggered a memory and what's happening with Volunteers of America? Can we get an update for the next meeting?
Sure.
Sure. For the next meeting or?
Yeah, next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some research needs to be done, but I haven't seen any progress up there in months.
I think it's just a matter
Wait
of
on funding it. They-
they're waiting for funding and it's the plan date is next year. Sorry.
Yeah. They were supposed to do construction. Did I just talk about it?
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
It's early.
As long as we don't do another 10-minute detour. They were supposed to do construction this summer. They didn't get all the funding that was required because there was something a bit weird in the application process. I can talk more with Brian about that. That's why the area at the top of the hill got seeded, just so it's a little grassy for now. They do still plan to build it at least by next year, but they have to just wait for some more funding now. That's about it. I was actually just talking about this with Mark before the meeting. And I was going to talk to Brian about when they might be doing a building permit at this point. That's really it for the updates.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on the agenda? Next meeting? Motion to adjourn?
Someone.
Okay.
So
All